Hello, everyone. My name is Raghu Rangan. I'm the product manager on OpenEdge. This is Terry Mays, and he's the engineering manager. And we're going to talk to you about Pro2. So here's just kind of an agenda of what we're going to go over for this session. We're going to do an overview of Pro2, how Pro2 works, the configuration options that you get with Pro2. And what's currently in development with Pro2, because there's some exciting things going on right now. We're going to do a demo for that, and then we'll conclude. So for those of you how many of you are new to Pro2 or in this room? All right, okay. So for those of you who are new to Pro2, let's see what kind of value it brings to an organization. So companies today kind of utilize different applications to manage their day-to-day operations, right? You have ERP data, you have CRM stuff, you have payroll applications, you have all this stuff. And now you need to find a way to consolidate that data from these sources. And so for reporting especially, this is necessary to put it in a place and get that timely data. So you need this timely business data. You need alternative views of data. You need to have data consolidation, and you need reporting. And all this on these disparate sources of data. So you need this in real time. Okay. So the challenge. So application level replication is difficult, right? So why couldn't you and it's difficult to write something on your own. So the difficulties are like maintaining connectivity, managing the different data types and data structures, and it's complicated. I mean, you could write your own, but you don't really want to do it. And one of the biggest challenges is that your replicated data is only as fresh as your last batch. You want to have up-to-date data at all times, especially when you're doing BI analysis on your data. And if you don't get fresh data, it causes a disruption in your normal business operations, especially. And you can lead to poor performance, and you can end up with data that is not very good and doesn't give you enough insights into what you want to do. So to help with you, especially, the Pro2 is what we offer. So Pro2 is a product developed by Progress that allows an organization to replicate data from an OpenEdge database to a target database. That database could be another OpenEdge database, Microsoft SQL Server, or Oracle. And it leverages a lot of OpenEdge components as well, and it provides a complete replication flexibility and capability, and supports versions 9.x to now 12 and above. So we have about a little more than 200 customers worldwide, and we have done 600 implementations so far. So bottom line, with Pro2, you can tailor the data to match your specific needs. You can provide near real-time accurate data to support your business decisions. You can leverage the value of the data in your system of record, and it makes your data available to third parties in a safe, controlled manner. So rather than having your BI, your analyst hit directly to your OpenEdge database, they can go to a separate database altogether and go off that and not disturb your normal operations. So here's one company that uses Pro2. It's Brasco. So their big challenge. They're a large distributor of industrial automation products in the United States, and their big challenge was to keep their ERP data safe while having some flexibility to use whatever analytics and reporting capabilities. So the solution was to set up Pro2, and Pro2 data replication was set up within a few weeks. And as a result, the ERP data has protection and doesn't impact their ERP production database with any performance hits. And the report creation and modification was a lot faster. They almost do it in almost a third of the time. Another company that uses Pro2 is Nextier Automotive. They're an automotive parts supplier. And so they were also very much in the similar business case. And they were moving their QAD install to the QAD cloud. And they were losing the ability to have reporting visibility to their QAD data. So Pro2 was capable. They set up Pro2 in a WAN mode so that it was able to access the QAD cloud and replicate their QAD cloud to an on-premise Microsoft SQL Server database. So then their own teams could then do their analysis, their BI analysis for them. And so they had control over their own data. So next, Terry's going to go to how Pro2 works and go into kind of the inner workings of what Pro2 does, how you can set up Pro2. Okay.
That's going to sound good on the recording right there. Raghu said there's interesting things coming in Pro2, and just so you know, that's the only time you will ever hear something about replication being interesting, I guarantee it. What is Pro2 replication? So some people are new here, and really I'm going to talk more about the challenges of replication in general, whether you're writing your own thing or you know, you're buying SQL Server replication. It doesn't really matter if we're going to talk about replication just kind of as a general thing here for a second. And with the first thing out of the box for any replication tool is how are you going to do change data capture? You know, if you're not doing change data capture, then you're doing batch level updates to your reporting system at night. Batch works for a long period of time until the data gets too big, right? And so if you're sending the entirety of table data over to some sort of reporting system, as the data gets bigger and bigger, then the amount of time it takes to do batches at night get longer and longer. And if you have any problems along the way, then your ability to recover and have reporting data for the next day are jeopardized. So with any real replication tool, you're taking net change and then replicating only that net change over, because those are very small increments of work. And even hardware does it that way. SAN replication is all taking net change. So the idea is, how are you going to do net change in your application? You can do it one of two ways in Pro2. You can either put replication triggers on your progress database and record events as they happen, or you can turn 11.7 CDC on and have built-in change data capture. Both of those things work very similar, except CDC is done at the engine level, so it's nice and fast, and it is recording events. And the trigger-based replication, we fire directly into one of the new Pro2 tables that are associated with replication. The reason we go through this stage of making Pro2 replication records versus CDC is really so we can apply things like threading models and and other advanced features, I guess you should say. Once you get change data capture out of the way, then it's a matter of, okay, how am I going to send that data to the target where I want that to go? And Pro2 makes this very easy. Raghu mentioned that it can be a challenge writing your own thing associated with replication, and that's very much true. I've been doing Pro2 for a long time, and I've written several replication systems actually. And there's things that you don't consider, like, are the transactions on the source side database complete? Can I safely write that? If you're reading no-lock records on the source side, do you have an opportunity for that record to roll back on you? If you've already replicated it, what are you going to do? How are you detecting the rollback? The nice thing about Pro2 is it does all that for you. It does transaction integrity, and it makes sure that only items that are replicated, that are fully committed into the OpenEdge database are then queued, or not necessarily queued, but are then replicated to the progress database, or to the SQL Server target database, I should say. And really, again, if you think about it, kind of in two encapsulated pieces. CDC is recording events, and we're trapping these events, so now we know what to we now know what to send. Pro2 then reads on these change capture events and does any transformations necessary to send this data over to the target side database, and that's in LAN or WAN mode, which is kind of cool. So if you have QAD in the cloud and you need to do reporting on premise, there's not really many solutions for that, right? But Pro2 absolutely does that, and we have many, many customers that are doing it that way. And it's not just QAD Cloud, really. It's just anything that's a wide area network away from you, whether it's even if it's on your own infrastructure. Sometimes doing individual replication over a wide area network can be very, very slow, even when the WAN is fast, actually. Configuration options. So Raghu also mentioned a couple of things that, that for new Pro2 customers, this might be interesting, actually. Progress has OpenEdge replication, OpenEdge replication plus, so you could just really replicate your Progress database to another instance, another target, and you can report off that target. So you can point all your SQL connections or whatever, even ABL connections over to a replicated target, and you're off and going, and that just works. But the thing that where Pro2 begins to differ from that is in an OER mode, the source and target schemas have to be exactly the same. The footprint has to be exactly the same of those databases. So what if at a reporting level, well, and let me back up. And those databases being the same, when you talk about things like disaster recovery and being able to fail over to a target database, those, all of those things are necessary for that, right? But from a reporting perspective, you can start thinking outside the box a little bit when you aren't limited to the requirement of the source database and the target database have to be the same. So, for example, if you bought this, whether this is a homegrown application source side or you bought it, you're doing some new ad hoc queries over on the target side database, and what if you decide there needs to be a new index on this thing? What if there needs to be a new table structure associated with that to make your particular reporting needs go quickly and the way you want it to look? Well, in most cases, you don't necessarily want to go do that on the source side. You don't want the overhead of having to maintain extra indexes just for reporting, for a reporting or a BI structure, especially if you're star scheming the backside of that. So the nice thing about Pro2 is you can just add indexes to the target. You can just add fields to the target. So even if the target is a staging database upon which you are doing other downstream applications, no sweat. You can just add columns to the target database table and say, hey, I've crawled that, so if you're pushing data downstream. So the nice thing is, the source schema, target schema doesn't have to be the same, and you can begin to tune the needs of the application, the source database for the needs of the application, and you can begin to tune the target side schema for the needs of the reporting piece. So out of the box, what does Pro2 do? We do one target to multiple. One source database to multiple targets. That's right out of the box. You can run unsynchronized schemas. Even the table names and field names don't have to match. You can manually map all that. So you can really make the target look like what you want the target to look like. And then when you get it's not outside, it's in the box, but I treat it more as advanced configuration. You can do things like table names being completely different, field names being completely different. And you can also do things like, especially if you're a global organization, you have lots of copies of a source application, you can now consolidate multiple sources into a single target. We did that for a company, and for the first time in the history, they had 8 QAD instances all across the world. And consolidated reporting was something they just could not do. It took them 30 days to load their BI tool. So every time they got it loaded, they were doing it again. And we put Pro2 on top of it, and it kept all 8 of those instances into a single SQL Server copy, and they did consolidated reporting for the first time in the history of the company. And it took just a couple of weeks to get it in, 3 weeks, I think, total. So, you can really begin to think outside of the box, and that's what this diagram illustrates, is multiple sources into a single target. I showed 2, but really it could be an unlimited number going into a single target. Now you have to do some spatial setup, and that's why I consider this advanced configuration. If you have multiple data coming from the, like schemas, you have to know, okay, what source database did that thing come from? So there's some slight configuration changes associated with that, but otherwise it just works.
So we're going to go quickly into what currently is going on right now. So we have our standard disclaimer slide. Things that are happening right now may change. So we're actually looking to release Pro2 6.0 very soon, and big changes are coming on the horizon. So the main goal of Pro2 6.0 is to be simple, pretty, and awesome. So the main thing, the big thing is that we have a simpler setup with the replication wizard to save time and money. There's an easier upgrade process to ensure backward compatibility. It's a modern, intuitive web interface that is with less complicated configuration and management. So it's easier to map from source to target. And it prepares us for the enterprise level of Pro2 in the future. So then you can scale when you have large scale setups for Pro2. So I will give you a quick preview, and then we're actually going to do a demo. So this is what Pro2 looked like before on the landing page, and this is what it'll look like in Pro2 6.0 in a web browser. We have now like in the properties page, for example. This is where it kind of looked before, and this is where it's going to evolve to next. You have the actions, so how you can like set up your replication triggers and such. And this is what it'll look like now. So functionality-wise, the things will still remain the same, but now it's a lot easier to use and easier to find. And bulk loads, if you were doing bulk load. And now this is how the modernized bulk loads will be. So really, it is pretty cool what the new look of Pro2 and how much easier it is to use for all the users. So Terry's actually going to show you a demo and actually run an instance of Pro2 6.0 now, and for you to show you all.
I'm not going to deep dive this. If you want to see anything in particular, let me know. But what I'm going to try to do here is show you some of the newer concepts and where we're going with some of this. Yeah, we did reskin, and and if you're a Pro2 user, you see things like threads are running, and you can disable that and shut it down. That was in GUI and it's in web. We have the ability to, actually 5.5 introduced a dashboard capability. So this idea of monitoring threads and keeping volume statistics and all of that is kind of the future of this. But really, there's a couple of concepts here that I'd really like to point out, because this is where all the future enhancements are really we're going to drive from. One is this idea of watch boxes and the ability that you can begin to add watch box data on your own in the future. So you'll be able to plus these in. We can provide them to you, and you can load them. So if this set of criteria at the top doesn't mean anything to you, you can begin to change that. There's an idea of jobs here. And so since timeout happens browser-wise, we're offloading requests, and we're calling those actions now. And we've gotten complaints over periods of time that customers want to get away from things like using scheduled task in Windows or cron in Linux, and they want to have built-in schedulers. So job is the first pass of that. While you won't, in this initial version, you won't be able to schedule the job, but the job will run in background and be delivered to you. And we're calling, whatever the delivery of those things are, if they're SQL files for building the target database, we're calling those assets. But then you'll be able to schedule all of those. So even replication starts, the whole 9 yards are going to come straight out of Pro2 beginning here very soon. And really, that's going to be an area that customers have really begun to ask. We've gotten a lot of requests for us to begin to change that. Raghu also mentioned that we're going to start down the enterprise level view. So in the old GUI, if you had the 8 instances of QAD that I mentioned before, then each one of those had a GUI screen and a configuration associated with that. And since enterprise is tricky in this replication world because you know, these machines that all these things are running on are distributed worldwide. So I can't just necessarily just point you to an area. So we're introducing a concept in the next version where all of these instances, you can set them up independently and you can have different teams monitor and configure those independent sessions. And then you have the ability to set a flag and say, I want to roll statistical data up. And so that makes the enterprise level reporting a lot simpler, actually. And then when you see an anomaly in it and you say, hey, this graph is weird, and I point on that thing and you're at the enterprise level view, then I can take you down to the web app at the actual instance level. So you'll be able to control that based on security if you want to go that way. So this is the first part of the enterprise level POP. That's also been a request that customers frequently bring up, and we are in the process of delivering that. And then the last piece here is if you're an existing Pro2 customer, you'll remember that, well, there's several things here, actually. One is you have to manually edit PF files, and version 6 does away with all that. So all the PF edits are automated now. We're trying to keep you from having to go out at the disk level and do any manual file edits going forward. The next piece is the idea of having kind of a mixed thing of Pro2 instances. And when I say mixed thing, what I mean is you can have a LAN copy and a WAN copy, and I can have a trigger-based change data capture and a CDC-based change data capture, and I want those all in my same Pro2 instance. So while the initial version of 6 doesn't support it, all the database structure is in there for us to begin to support that, and we're going to start working on that immediately. That gives us a couple of cool things going forward, especially how threads will be able to dynamically connect to instances. So the whole idea of threading is going to get a little weird going forward, especially if you're saying, I want this thread to handle this set of things. Threads can become dynamic in the future and really just figure out, hey, I'm behind, I need to start one up. So that's kind of where we're heading with all of that. And this really, you know, I have considered it's 6.0, which is it's really a rescan of 5.5, but all the underpinnings that we're putting all the underpinnings in place so that we can begin to quickly roll out these high-level requests that we've been getting from customers to, you know, just to make life easy, especially in an enterprise-level view. That is a big thing that's coming for sure. So Watchbox is the idea of jobs, and then really just consolidated views is where I was going with this. I will be happy to show you any pieces here if anybody's interested in it. You can always come down to the booth too, and I could show you there as well if you don't want to do it here now. But that's kind of where we're going with all of that.
I think you closed it. Okay. Oh. Ah, there it is. I got it. So after 6.0, after the release of 6.0, which is coming in the early summer of this year, we're looking at exploring new avenues. So some of the areas we're looking at right now are actually more ease of use features to help you kind of set up faster and make it easier and more standardized. Another is to look at replication into more target type DB types. Right now, Pro2 is limited to only Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, and another Progress database. So, but we're looking at expanding beyond that. So what do customers looking for? We've gotten requests for Postgres SQL, MongoDB, Redshift, Hadoop even. So we would love your feedback moving forward. What are your needs for your business for replication for BI and for big data analytics? So as a summary, just Pro2 provides real-time replication for reporting. It's your data and how you like it. It's low overhead, it's easy to administrate, and it is a fairly well-established product. So it comes up with up-to-date features, and it is constantly evolving, as you see with Pro2 6.0. We are putting a lot of work in to make it easier and make it more widely available for everyone. So to get more, I would like to put a plug-in for the customer validation program. If you're an OpenEdge customer, even if you don't know about the customer validation program, this allows you, the customer, to work with us and give us feedback as we work with all other aspects of the OpenEdge product. So Pro2 is there. If you do have questions about the language or something like that for OpenEdge, this is where you can go and we can talk, and you get to see. You get early access to software. You get to ask the developers questions as well about upcoming features.
We post sprint reviews if they are significant. So you get to see it as
Yep. Yep. You get to see behind the curtain. So that is it. Thank you for coming.